Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Superheroes, Movies, and Superhero Movies. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
And today we're talking about Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Released in 1991, starring Keanu Reeves, Alex Winter, William Sadler, Joss Ackland, and George Carlin. Written by Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon, the writers from the first movie, same guys. And directed by Peter Hewitt, not the same director as the first movie. This is a film that you had not seen before.
I had never seen this movie.
And I had seen it a couple times. I had not seen it as much as I had seen the first one. And I did not get to see it in the theater. We touched on that briefly in the last Bill and Ted episode. I was either not allowed to see it or my parents just did not want to sit through another Bill and Ted movie. Not that I sat through the first one, because I don't think I saw that in the theater either, but I watched the first one quite a bit. And so they were probably just like, no thanks. So I didn't see it until... I actually don't have a memory of seeing it for the first time, but I know that I obviously had seen it before. I just don't recall sitting down and watching it for the very first time. I've seen it, here and there throughout the years. But there was enough about the movie that I couldn't remember. Like, watching it this time around, I was... I guess we should give our little warning. Not that I think anybody really cares if we spoil Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, but we are going to spoil the movie.
You never know.
You never know. So if you haven't seen Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, go watch it and then come back and listen to the rest of this. But anyway, I couldn't remember like how they defeated the bad guys and stuff. I just couldn't remember like the little details like that.
It's interesting that a movie that like. On a guesstimate, how many times do you think you watched this movie growing up?
All the way through? I don't know. Probably not that many times. I would say maybe like 4.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not that many times.
Because movies for us that we watched as a kid, really watched, it was up in the 20s and 30s.
Right, yeah, exactly. Batman and Ghostbusters.
Memorized,
Yeah, Back to the Future, all those. I watched those movies on
So this
repeat.
wasn't one of those?
No, the first one I think was. Like, I watched the first one a lot, and I have a pretty good memory of everything that happened in the first one. This one, I couldn't tell you the last time I'd actually sat down and watched the whole thing from beginning to end. So I couldn't piece together. I remembered everything in the movie, and like once the ending came out, I was like, oh right. But I couldn't. If you had asked me before I'd started watching it, like, what's the ending of this movie? I'd be like, I don't know. I can't remember.
That's kind of cool that you got to.
Yeah.
Rewatch it, and I mean, like you said, you remembered, but you didn't know up until the point.
Right. Yeah. So that was cool. So what are your thoughts on having seen it for the very first time?
So I'd say about halfway through the movie, I was actually liking it more.
Oh wow!
Than Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
So the first half, you were like, "This is actually better."
I think I had an enjoyment of. One, having a better understanding of the characters.
Sure.
And being able to take that and see them, like, recreated for another story. Mm-hmm. And to see how well the characters were carried on.
Right.
And I felt like they did a really good job of keeping, Bill and Ted in the box of what Bill and Ted were.
Right.
And it was funny. Like, there were a lot of funny parts. Especially in the beginning, that I thought were really funny. Like, for instance, the fact that Bill's stepmom, what's her name?
Missy
divorced his mom or his dad, and then married Ted's dad.
Yeah,
I thought that was hilarious.
Isn't there a part in the beginning where Ted says something and Bill's like, "That's your mom," dude, or whatever. Like the same thing.
And then it shows Bill's dad like over in the corner.
He's like so depressed. Yeah. I actually like that too. I thought that was funny.
It was really funny. I thought that was pretty creative. Where did that wasn't the same house though that Ted's dad had though, right? From the first one?
No.
It seemed a lot larger, and I was wondering like if there was something to that.
No, I don't know. Maybe it was just they couldn't get that same house, for location, or maybe they couldn't get that location again.
Speaking of locations, I'm going to bring it up later.
Okay.
When we, I'm sure it'll come up, and I'll mention it then. But there's something about a location.
Okay. Do I need to remind you?
No, I'll remember.
Okay,
once
gotcha.
it comes up. Yeah,
I got you.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think I'm glad that they didn't. I read a trivia on IMDb, and like I always say, you kind of got to take those with a grain of salt. But supposedly, like the original idea was going to be very similar to the first movie, where they had like an English report they had to do or something, and it was going to involve the time travel again and everything. And I'm glad they didn't go that route. Like one of the things I think makes this sequel kind of stand out, I guess you could say, especially with sequels during that time, during like the late 80s, early 90s, is that it is so different. It's similar, but it's so different than the first movie.
It's very different.
Yeah.
Like, you have the same characters. That's really
Right.
the only similarity is how they interact with the situation they're in.
There's no time travel involved.
Right.
And, I mean, it's...
But it's just a weird situation that these two,
Right.
like, just airheads
Yeah.
are in.
And one of the things I love about it, and this is one of my notes, I love that they're never... Bill and Ted never like stop and they're like, this is crazy. Like, this is insane what is happening to us. They are just completely like, they just kind of go with it.
Yeah.
They're
you're
totally
right.
like go with the flow people. And my note that I wrote was that I like that Ted is not even deterred by death. And, he's like, we got to save the princesses. And Bill's like, but we're dead. And he's like, we got to try. Like, it's like death is not even a thing. Like, he's got to go try to save the princesses. Never mind the fact that they just died.
Right.
And that's one of the things I love.
That also kind of, well, I don't know. I was going to say it shows that they have good hearts, but it might be, that they're just being selfish for love.
I think they have good hearts. I think Bill and Ted have good hearts. I think Bill and Ted... I love, not to skip completely to the end, because I do have questions about the end credits, but there's during the end credits... You see all like the newspaper articles and stuff?
Yes.
And there's a magazine article. I can't remember if it's like Rolling Stone or something, but it's like Bill and Ted. It says, we honestly have nothing bad to say about them.
That's right. I was going to bring up those and just pull them up and just read some of them because they were hilarious. Because I almost turned off the movie. And then I was like, well, let me read this stuff. Mm-hmm. And there was one that said, death, to release solo album, yeah. and then a few after that it says Death's solo album was a failure, yeah. Rejoining Wild Stallions,
and then a little bit it might have been before he rejoins, but there was one that says Death is a part of like a lip sync scandal or something like that. So he's like not really doing his own singing and stuff,
Yeah,
it's pretty great.
It's good stuff.
So I don't want to get into my rating yet, but I will say that I do enjoy this movie, and I think part of the reason I like it is just because it is so different than the first movie. They're not, so many sequels can sometimes be like a carbon copy of the previous movie, and that is not the case with this one, I don't think.
Right.
There is this, they have in the first movie it's the history report, and in this one it's the Battle of the Bands, but those feel different enough, even though they're both on stage.
They're both on stage, and I actually thought about that too. I was like, both these end with them being able to address an entire crowd.
Audience, yeah. Mm-hmm. Or a crowd, yeah. And in this case, it's actually the entire world.
But it was the moment of, in time that was crazy that turned out to be Rufus.
Right.
Because he does the guitar, like, grappling hook at the beginning, which is pretty funny that a grappling hook is a guitar.
I feel like everything's probably a guitar.
Right.
Guitar shaped whatever in the future.
And he like didn't show up, and I was like, why is Rufus letting all this stuff happen? Like, did he fall into the time,
right.
Whatever, and get just stuck there? But obviously they wouldn't have shown him grappling on and going.
Right, yeah. Like, if he was just dead.
Right.
That does bring up a good question, though. Like, did Rufus know that Bill and Ted got murdered? And he was like, they're going to come back.
Well, I think there's a loophole in this because I'm trying to remember what it was. It's at the end when he shows that he was there, and I wish I could remember what it was, but like basically Rufus couldn't have done that because it messed up time.
Mm.
It wasn't Rufus was there beforehand.
Right.
So, based on how they do time in this.
Yeah.
I love how at the end they we'll get to the end later.
Right. You want to go back up a little bit? So the first note I wrote on this movie is that the future has terrible clothes. Everybody's wearing
that's evident
awful outfits. The shoes are way too big. Everything's neon, which is fine because that was the early 90s. But yeah, all the clothing looked like it's made from like foam material you would buy from like Hobby Lobby or something. Awful.
I was surprised that they weren't all just dressed up like Bill and Ted style.
Right. Which would actually, I guess, would make sense, but I guess it would be too present day. Like, it would look too much like how...
But it doesn't matter. Because they, like, emulate their style. Like, everything is about Bill
their way
and
of
Ted.
life is about Bill and Ted.
So it should have been in.
I agree. But maybe they were just trying to... Obviously, they were trying to say, this is the future, and so they had to make the clothing different and everything. But you're right. I agree. They should have just all been dressed like Bill and Ted. They should have all been dressed like Bill and Ted from the first movie.
That's true. Yeah.
Because I actually, speaking of clothing, I love Bill and Ted's outfits from the first movie. But I love the clothes in this movie. Like, I love Ted's smiley face jacket. Like,
is that from the first one?
No, he didn't wear that in the first one. That's strictly from this movie.
I was wondering because in the menu screen, that smiley face like rolls.
Oh, really?
On next to like the play button and everything, and
right.
I was like, why is there a smiley face?
Yeah, it's his jacket.
Yeah,
I love it. If I had that jacket, I'd wear it right now. I'd wear it today. I love too that Bill and Ted are auditioning for Battle of the Bands without even knowing how to play.
Right,
like that's pretty confident.
That's what it was. That's what I was trying to think of, is the fact that Rufus was the one that got them on the show.
Right.
So if Rufus was the one that got them on the show and made them become, like, that's how they supposedly influenced the world, right?
Right, yeah.
That's like the moment in time where everyone's like, whoa, like enlightenment.
Yeah.
And Rufus, if he hadn't gone back in time to save their lives, wouldn't have gotten them on the show.
Right.
So there never was a time where they got on the show without Rufus.
Right. That's a good point. I don't know.
Okay.
My only see, this is how like it's not how time travel works in these movies, or at least not in the first movie. But in my brain, that's kind of how time travel, like, it makes sense to me. Like, Rufus always went back, and he always got them into Battle of the Bands, and that's just how it is. Same with, like, the first movie, you could say Rufus always went back in time and helped. I think we had a conversation about this in the last episode where, like, Rufus was essentially the chosen one. Like, when he was born, they were like, your child is going to be he's going to grow up to be the man who goes back in time to help Bill and Ted. And, like, how much pressure is that on Rufus? And so I feel like it's the same thing. Like, not only does Rufus go back in time in the first movie and help them do their history report, but your son will also be the guy that goes and gets them on Battle of the Bands, or something. So, so in that instance, it's like they also already knew that Denomalos was going to go back and try to defeat Bill and Ted. And if they knew that, then shouldn't Denomalos know that? And maybe Denomalos was just arrogant enough to think that he would actually be able to win.
That's a good point, too. Like, it kind of plays both sides of the time travel.
Right.
It's like we have where everything goes back and loops, but we also have, what do you call it? The
different timelines, paths.
Yeah, like, exactly. So, I don't know.
I don't either. There's a couple of holes in this movie. There's a couple of questions I wrote down. I think we'll get to them in a little bit. Nothing huge, I guess, but I feel like maybe there were some deleted scenes in this movie because there was a couple times where I was like, what did that mean? You know what I mean? Like, for example, Bill and Ted are revived. They come back to life, and they have Station with them, and he puts Death and Station in the back of the van, and it shows them closing the door to the van, and then it like zooms in on Death, and he just screams. He's like, ah! And then the van drives off, and I was like, is Death afraid of driving, or is he just scared that Bill and Ted are driving?
I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Yeah,
That's
it was weird to me. I was like,
I gotcha.
I felt like there was no context for that joke. I guess
I took it as
he was scared about Bill and Ted driving the vehicle.
Yeah.
Who did he think was going to drive? Station? So I don't know.
That's good. Well, no, actually, when they closed the doors, it looked like he wasn't like necessarily volunteering to be in there.
Oh, okay.
And he was like, "They're closing the doors."
I thought we were just hanging out here. We're going somewhere. What did you think of Death, played by William Sadler?
I thought he was pretty great.
Yeah.
I think my favorite part was the battleship scene.
Yeah. You sunk my battleship.
It's the best part is when he gets his hit, and they look so bummed, and they're like, "Oh, you hit," and then it cuts to him, and his mouth like twitches a little bit into a smile. He's like,
I have you now.
And then the next scene or the next shot is them getting hit on him, and it cuts to him, and he just looks so put out. And that was you sunk my battleship. And
that scene makes me laugh. I love how they keep winning at everything, and they're like best of 7, you know. I love that. It's a good scene. I love that they're playing. I like the games they play too. They play Battleship, and then they do Clue, right? The football one, I'm not familiar with.
That must have been, like, I'm guessing something at the time.
Yeah, I guess so. I wasn't familiar with that football game either. And then they do Twister, right?
Right.
And then does he admit defeat after Twister?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So pretty good. That's a spoof, obviously, of a movie called The Seventh Seal. But I've never actually seen The Seventh Seal. However, I would assume in that movie he's playing chess with the person. It's like a knight. And I assume the knight loses to death. That's what I would assume. But I don't know. I've never seen the movie.
Gotcha.
I'll have to watch it. I actually wanted to watch it before we did the podcast, so I would know for sure, like, you know, what this parody was referring to and stuff.
Yeah.
But I didn't get to it. But he also, I think they designed him to look kind of like Death did in that movie too.
Okay. Interesting.
Uh-huh.
I think, you know, if it had been done today, it would have been probably
CGI
a
or
CGI
something.
skeleton. Yeah.
Motion capture. He would have been on set in like the pajamas with all the dots and everything, and then they would have replaced him, kind of like they did with Hulk in the Avengers and stuff. Yeah, I agree. Probably because it was very obvious he was just like wearing dark makeup around his eyes and everything. You know, I think he looks really good.
He does. Like, I don't think he's supposed to be a skeleton per se.
No, I don't think so either.
But yeah,
but you're right. He probably would have been, or he wouldn't have had like a face at all, you know, and it would have been like this floating, almost like the what are those things called in Lord of the Rings?
The ring wraiths.
Yeah. Almost like that, where like they have a hood, but you can't see.
Yeah.
You can't see under the hood.
Nazguls.
Right. That's Death in The Seventh Seal.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely inspired.
So, but yeah, I love the fact that Death is in the movie, you know, and he's such a big character actually too.
He's like
the third star essentially.
Yeah, I was gonna say with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, when we mentioned that we were gonna do it,
yeah,
and I had only seen that movie once,
right,
and my immediate thought went to Death first of all.
Oh wow,
I was like, oh, it's the dead guy.
And then he never showed
up. And then I saw the cover, and I saw George Carlin, and I didn't even remember there being another, like, a character like him.
Oh wow,
I remembered Death.
Yeah.
So, and then in this, yeah, he's way more in it than Rufus, because the way that the cover portrays Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure with Rufus, like, you think he's going to be accompanying
part of the team.
them.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And he's not, and Death was along
for the ride
pretty much the whole time, except like when they're in hell, which was very interesting stuff. It kind of like the hell scenes kind of reminded me of like Tim Burton.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah,
I was like, this feels almost like Beetlejuicy.
I actually looked up the director Peter Hewitt to see like what else he had done, because I think he actually had a pretty decent style in this movie.
I liked it. Yeah,
like you said, you've got like kind of the surreal Tim Burton-esque type stuff in hell, And then just some of the comedy and some of the stuff that he did in the movie I thought was pretty good. He hasn't done a whole lot. He did like the Garfield movie and like, something else.
Weird.
Yeah, so it's it's...
This movie did not do as well as Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
I don't think it did, no. I don't know if it was necessarily a failure. I didn't look that up on Box Office Mojo to see how much it made. I guess I can do that real quick.
There were probably a lot of people that were like your parents.
Yeah. You didn't want to take the kids to see Bill and Ted?
Saw the first one.
I don't want to go see those bumbling idiots for another hour and a half.
A second one.
The first one was not enough? Yeah, you're probably absolutely right. All right, so Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Well, I mean, the first one made $40 million, almost $40.5 million.
And
right?
What was the budget? Because
that's a good question.
I'm curious what that would be adjusted for inflation.
It doesn't have production budget information on here for the first movie, but the second movie made $38 million. So it made $2 million less. So unless, maybe you're right, maybe they upped the budget for the second movie because the first one was a success, and then the first one made $2 million less. It doesn't have production budget on here either.
Yeah, I think there were a lot more effects in this.
Yeah, I agree.
Like in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, there weren't really a lot of effects. Like they went back in time.
There was like some special effects, like with the the time travel tubes or whatever you want to call that. But this had more practical effects. I think they had the robot bodies.
Right.
It had station. It had death and the hell sets and everything. So you probably did have a bigger budget. It made more on opening weekend than the first one did, but that's not totally surprising since it is a sequel, I guess. The first one made $6 million opening weekend, and this one made $10 million. But yeah, I'm guessing
almost double.
Yeah. But then I wonder if it dropped off. I wonder if it made $10 million, and then the next weekend it made like way less.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't actually. So I still am not sure if that's considered a failure or not. But I would guess that the production budget was bigger. And $38 million was not what they were hoping for. But we're getting a third one.
And that's guaranteed. Or, I mean, obviously nothing's guaranteed. But that's like, it's in the works?
They have started shooting it, I found out. Yeah.
Really?
Yep. Somebody, I just saw a casting notification that somebody was cast as the villain. I don't know if you know him. He's been on some TV shows and stuff. But he's another bald guy.
Okay.
So he's the villain. I do have. I don't want to. Well, remind me when we get to the end to talk about Bill and Ted 3 because I have some questions.
Okay,
but I don't want to get into that just yet.
Cool.
So in this movie, the bad guy whose name is Denomalos, which I found out is Ed Solomon backwards, and Ed Solomon is one of the writers.
That's pretty cool.
So yeah, I guess it's supposed to be kind of like it's like DE space Nomalos. So Ed and then Solomon backwards. Anyway, he creates an evil Bill and Ted pair of robots. And the whole plan is to send these evil robots back in time to kill Bill and Ted and then ruin their Battle of the Bands. And what I love about the fact that he created these robots is that he gave them Bill and Ted's personality, just evil.
Right.
So they are essentially.
Oh yeah, I love that too.
They're just like Bill and Ted, except that they have bad hearts instead of like good hearts.
Yeah, the first time you see them do their like little guitar finger, like
yeah,
I was like, oh, that's great.
Yeah, right. and they say like they're always like excellent about stuff, but it's like evil stuff.
Right. Like hit that kitty.
Right. Yeah, they're like aiming for the cat while they're driving around. Just totally evil. So that was cool. I like that. It's just funny to me that because Denomalos hates Bill and Ted so much, and yet he created Bill and Ted. It's just evil. And he even says at one point, he's like, I hate them. I hate the robot versions of them. I hate them. And Bill's like, you made us, dude.
And I love how they took the concept from the first movie, too, when they first see them. And they're like, hey, it's us again. Come on in.
Right, yeah. Right, which is what I would have thought, too, honestly. Like, and I like that they did. That was another, like, kind of clever thing, I think, on the writers' parts, because in the first movie, they do see themselves, and at first they're, like, totally blown away by it. But then they realize, they kind of understand time travel and how it works, and so when when they show up, it's like, oh, we must be going on another time travel adventure here soon.
Right.
I love it. It's great.
I don't get the whole, like, I love how Ted, like, he's like, I have a bad feeling.
Yeah. I have a weird feeling about this.
And they do another test. How did he know the 3 fingers?
I don't think he did. I think he just said, I mean, Ted literally said, you know, like, how many fingers am I about to hold up? And Ted was like, 3. And I think then Ted held up, like, he didn't have it behind his back or anything. He just then held up 3 fingers and was like, whoa.
Oh, I gotcha.
Because that's actually one of my favorite parts. After he does that, he holds up the 3 fingers. He's like, whoa. Evil Bill and Ted, like, kind of do, like, a laugh type thing. And then they look at each other. They roll their eyes at them. Like, these guys are idiots. Which I thought was really funny. And then one of the coolest things about this, well, not one of the coolest things about this movie, but I love the Star Trek reference.
Yes.
You get that episode with Captain Kirk stuck on whatever planet it is, and he's got the rock cliffs, which is, I believe it's called Vasquez Rocks or something like that in California. I wanted to go to that before I moved home.
That's what I was talking about when I said I'd remember
the location.
Yeah. Because that was where they died from.
Right, they get shoved off the cliff, yeah.
So, and I think my daughter actually pointed that out. Like, I actually didn't even think about it.
Oh, really? She's like, oh, it's the same place from Star Trek?
Yeah, she was like, hey, that's where the guy from Star Trek was.
And you're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I had meant to go up there while I was living in California and never got around to it. And then by the time we moved, I didn't have a chance to go up there. But I think it was only like an hour from where I lived, and I meant to go up there because of Star Trek and because of Bill and Ted. Like, I wanted to go see it for those 2 reasons. I never got a chance, unfortunately. But I do like that they just happened to be watching Star Trek, and then that's where they happened to go to be murdered. Unless Evil Bill and Ted saw it, and they were like, oh, it's a good idea. Let's drive them out to the desert. I like to, when they're in the car, and they're like, I'm cold. I'm like, hey, can we get some heat back here? And Evil Bill's like, shut up, Bill.
Right.
And he's like, wow, your future self's kind of a jerk.
And then he says again, I have a weird feeling.
And I like Bill's response. He's like, yeah, I need to remember to be nicer to myself.
And how I love how they tricked them into going out in the desert.
Yeah.
By pretending to be the princesses and saying that they were going to go drive into the desert.
Right. We're going to be alone by driving into the desert. Yeah. That's pretty good. That was a kind of a Terminator. Remember that scene in Terminator 2? Same year. Didn't that movie come out in 91? Terminator
92 was... Oh, you're right. It was 91.
Remember the scene in Terminator 2 where... I guess, is it... No, yeah. T-1000's on the phone, and Terminator takes the phone from... Or Arnold takes the phone from John Connor.
Oh, right.
He's like, what's the dog's name?
Yeah.
Like, Max. He's like, how's Woofy? He emulated his voice. I was like, I guess future robots can do that. They did it in that movie. They did it in this movie.
Right.
So Bill and Ted get thrown off a cliff, and they die. And I love that they give Death a Melvin, and then are able to like lose him.
I've never heard it referred to it
as a Melvin.
Yeah.
I feel like when I was a kid, I thought a Melvin was a wedgie that you pulled from the front.
Okay.
But at the end of the movie, Death gives Denomalos a Melvin, and I'm pretty sure he gives him a wedgie. He does it from the back.
Yeah.
But I thought they did it from the front to Death, but maybe I'm wrong.
I thought it was from the back.
It might have been
Death too.
So maybe they just didn't call it a wedgie; they called it a Melvin. Maybe it's a West Coast thing or something. You know, I'd always referred to it as a wedgie, but I know I'd heard the phrase Melvin, but maybe I'd heard it from this movie.
Yeah, I'd never heard it before.
Yeah, so maybe it was for this movie that informed me of the phrase Melvin. I don't know. We'll have to look that up. We'll have to Google what a Melvin is. We're old, but this movie's old, I guess. So.
Yeah. What was that again?
About the Melvin?
Yes.
Well, my point was I love the fact that they are just able to run away from Death.
Oh yeah.
Like Death, the first time we see Death, he's far away, and then the camera changes or something, and then suddenly Death is right behind Bill and Ted.
Yeah.
So the fact that they were able to just run away from Death and Death is unable to find them kind of cracks me up.
Right. I thought that was funny too. And when they mention, let's hope Death doesn't catch up with us, and then they pass a sign that has like the mileage to wherever they're going.
Right.
And as right after they said, let's hope he doesn't catch up, like Ted and Bill like jog for about 1 foot. And then they start walking again.
I didn't notice that. That's pretty great.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's about how far I would go jogging. I like to, speaking of kind of production design, I like how their costumes are like grayscale.
Yes.
Once they become
it made
dead.
it made it like eerie.
Yeah, it did. They have kind of pale makeup on, and their
Right.
clothes are like black and white essentially. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. Cool choice to do that, I thought. So they try to go back and find the princesses, I guess. And the princesses are back with evil Bill and Ted. They've come back to Bill and Ted's apartment for whatever reason. Maybe they called him over or something. And they're being jerks. And so the princesses essentially...
Well, yeah, that's right, because they called the princesses first.
Oh, they did? Evil Bill and Ted did?
No, I mean evil Bill and Ted.
That's what I said. Evil Bill and Ted?
Yeah. Oh, I think you said even Bill and Ted.
Oh, no. Evil Bill and Ted.
Didn't they, like, I'm trying to... Yeah, because remember the drum? They were like, we don't want to be, we don't want you to be in the band anymore. Didn't they do that?
Well, in this scene that I'm talking about, they're hanging out with the princesses and they're being jerks.
Right.
And
but I think that they came over to they thought they were going to be apologized to, I think.
Oh, that could be.
Because remember, they said, we're not going to the concert.
Well, this is when they take the rings off and they're like, well, maybe we don't want to be in the band anymore. Right. And Evil Bill and Ted are like, fine. And they don't seem to care that they don't want to be in the band anymore.
Oh, that's right.
And
that's
the
right.
princesses are really hurt, and they take off their rings and throw them down on the ground.
I must have just made up that whole scene
that
I'm talking about in my head. I was thinking...
So, because they didn't have anything to apologize for.
You're right. I'm thinking about the call that Evil Bill and Ted gave to Bill and Ted and emulated the girls, and they said, we're not going to be in the band anymore.
Correct. Yeah, and Bill and Ted were super bummed by that and didn't know what was going on. I
love how they had like Cracker Jack rings.
Yeah.
For wedding engagement rings.
Yeah.
And how they both proposed at the same time.
And I love their poems or whatever it was. Like they're the exact same except for...
Are they? I thought that they were like the same style, but they were using like... When it bled over to Ted, I think he was using different words like frogs and stuff. And
his Bill's was like desert themed. And Ted's was like aquatic themed or something.
Gotcha.
But they were pretty much the exact
Yeah.
They listed the exact same number of animals, and they both listed one animal that was wrong, and they were like, "Wait, no, that's something else." Maybe Bill's wasn't desert themed. Maybe that one animal was like a desert animal or something. But yeah, so it was like they were like the exact same poems, but I think they wrote them separately. It just shows you how like similar they are, I guess. And as friends / as people.
But at the same time, they say, "Will you marry us?" So it was like they knew that they were going to be proposing at the same time. I don't know. It was, but I liked it. It was
So anyway, so Bill and Ted are dead. Now the princesses think they've been dumped, basically, because Evil Bill and Ted have done that. And so Bill and Ted's idea, because I love this scene, is to go to the police station and try to get the cops to stop Evil Bill and Ted.
Because that's what you do.
Right, exactly. And so they don't know how to do it. So Ted ends up possessing his dad. And I actually think the actor, his name I believe is Hal Logan Jr., I think. I think the actor does a great job.
It's amazing.
Of playing Ted.
I remember watching that scene. I was like, they're lucky that he was able
to do that so well.
Yeah, that the guy that they cast as his dad from the first movie was able to do a Ted impression.
Right. And it makes me wonder if maybe he was doing, I wouldn't be surprised if that actor kind of did that impression, just behind the scenes on the first movie, and they were like, we've got to be able to put this into the second movie
possible.
Somehow.
Yeah.
Because the part where he puts his hand on his chest and puts his arm out, he's like, I totally possessed my dad. I was just like, that is so good.
It was great.
However, the other guy, not so much. I wish they had done it, because that guy wasn't, Bill that was just another cop. I feel like they could have cast anybody. And I feel like for that role, it would have been kind of maybe part of the audition process to act like Bill.
Right.
So I feel like they could have gotten somebody a little bit better. I mean, I've seen
I
that.
thought he did okay.
He wasn't terrible. He
Yeah.
just doesn't. He didn't
stand out like
stand out like Ted's dad stood out.
Yeah.
Because Ted's dad nailed it.
Yeah.
And the other guy didn't quite do it as well, but it wasn't terrible. But compared to Ted's dad, you're just like, because Ted's dad was awesome.
It was great. Yeah.
And I just love the look on the cops. He's like, so evil robots from the future murdered my son. Or he's like, murdered me. I mean, my son.
I also liked before they get possessed how the Bill cop, like possessed cop, says, "I hear your son's playing Battle of the Bands," and the whole room just laughs at his dad.
Yeah. It's pretty bad. He's like, "Don't remind me." And then I don't know why. Going back a little bit, so they're at the party, which I think was a birthday party for.
It was the princesses.
Which is funny that
it says happy
524th birthday or something, yeah. And nobody questions that. But anyway, why? Maybe I missed it in the beginning, so maybe if you caught it, you can tell me. Why is the Alaskan military guy there? Obviously, he's there for us to know who he is, so that way, when Ted goes to hell and we see him again, we know who he is. But
I think it's just I think it's just a goofy part
thing to have.
In
the movie.
That he was invited to the party because
he's friends with Ted's dad, maybe?
Right.
Okay.
He was being threatened.
Again.
Ted's dad was threatening Ted with going to military school.
Even though he graduated high school and doesn't need to go to military school?
Well, he's got to pay him back now.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
He was like, how are you going to pay me back?
That's right. I forgot about that.
Why don't you sell your guitars?
I started this movie one day and finished it another day. So some of the first part of the movie I've maybe forgot about a little bit. But, so that makes sense. So the possession doesn't work, and they have to try something else, which, if I recall, they go from that to Missy, right?
Yep.
So they do the seance.
Right.
And the two men in the seance, by the way, are Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson, the writers of the movie. But they...
Clark Gable.
yeah, that guy. That's Chris Matheson. I forget who Ed Solomon wants to see. But yeah, Clark Gable.
Who was it? Start with an A.
Aristotle?
No, that was the girl after him.
Oh, right.
It was a girl's name. Oh, like some actress or something.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. Maybe it's because they are performing a seance, but I don't know how Bill and Ted are suddenly make themselves.
Yeah, no, it's got to be the fact
that they're doing a seance.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that clearly freaks Missy out, and she uses a book to cast them out, to rid of,
which sends them to hell.
Right? Yeah. So I guess it does Death's job for him.
Yeah, because it was a rid evil spirits book,
right? Yeah,
so it's obviously going to send them to hell.
Right. Yeah. Little tidbit there. I tried to freeze frame it, but it was difficult for me to do. But apparently, when she opens that book up, you can see the on the top of the page is Secret Window, Secret Garden or something like that, which is a story by Stephen King. It's a Stephen King book that she actually opened up that they just put a different cover on.
Okay.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting that the book was just a Stephen King book. So anyway, yeah, so they get sent to hell and they fall down a really large hole for a really long time. They start playing. I didn't get the 20 questions joke. He's like, "Are you a mineral?" He's like, "Yeah." "Are you a tank?" "Yeah." I don't get that.
I'm guessing maybe at the time that maybe when that game originated, if it originated maybe in the 80s.
I have no idea.
And maybe a mineral was...
I feel like 20 questions have been around for a long time.
A thing, yeah, I would imagine. But maybe they used to use mineral as a thing? I don't know.
But how is a tank a mineral?
If they use mineral as I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't understand that joke. I'm going to have to Google that too, I guess. Google Melvin and Google the 20 questions.
Maybe it was just showing them being idiots.
I'm sure it is, but I didn't quite get it. But I like that they're following long enough that they can play 20 questions.
Like they could have done, are you an animal?
Right.
Yeah. Are you a refrigerator? How'd you know?
So when they land, they are in like the depths of hell, I guess.
Yeah.
Because they're on like a rock that's hooked to a chain.
Did you hear the lady in the background?
I forget.
She's like, I'm working as hard
as
yes,
I did hear that, yeah.
That was disturbing.
Yeah, it was a little bit. And Satan himself is standing across the way. And did people still call that the sign of the devil when they put, your first finger and pinky out? Like it's the rock or, like the hard rock
That's what
sign.
That's what it
originated it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be horns.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But I was like, I feel like it's not.
What'd they call it?
The sign of the devil.
I think like in the 80s and like
that's what it was
metal,
called,
yeah.
I feel like people don't call that anymore.
I haven't heard it called that, but I knew what they were talking about. Like
sure, I did too. Yeah. Like sign of the devil, dude, and I knew they were going to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what Spider-Man did when he was trying to go web go.
Right. But Spider-Man didn't say sign of the devil.
No, yeah, exactly. That's my point. But anyway, so they get Satan's attention. I don't even remember what they say to him. They are like, we need to go, and Satan's like,
oh yeah, you can go.
You can go. And they're like, oh, you're not as bad as everybody says.
That's right. He's like, hey, you got a bad rap.
But then they somehow like trick him too, because I guess he says you can go, and then the rock that they're on that's attached to the chain starts getting pulled in towards the big metal mouth. And
no. He says you can go after they were pulled in. They were pulled in. That's how they were able to talk.
Oh, so the sign of the devil.
That was
on
the
sign
rock.
of the devil. That they get pulled in.
They got his attention with that.
And right. Yeah, that's right. He says you can go, and they're like, oh, cool. And then the trap door falls.
Yeah,
that's right.
So they did not trick him.
No, they did not. He tricked them.
Yeah,
that's right. You're right. I remember because I was thinking they ran away from death, and now they're going to run away from Satan. But that's not how it worked. You're right. And that's when they fall into the cool, like, Tim Burton-y tunnel.
Right, which looked very uncomfortable.
It did.
You had to squat to walk,
and
it looked just like an infinite labyrinth.
Yeah.
Speaking of infinite, I love how Colonel Oates told them to drop down and give them infinity.
And I like how they actually dropped down. And Bill's like, I don't think I can do infinity push-ups, man. Yeah, that's pretty good. Drop down and give me.
Yes, dude, sir. Yes, sir, dude. Yes, sir, dude.
Yep. And then, so I understand how that could be a personal hell. And then they leave that room, and they split up.
Which was really dumb.
Yeah, it's a terrible idea. They split up, and Bill
luckily, when they come back out, they run right into each other.
Right,
again.
yeah, thankfully. Yeah, because you're right. That's like an infinite labyrinth.
If they would have
lost, never found each other
never
again.
seen each other again.
Yeah, that's a terrible idea. Never split up in hell. But Bill goes into a room, and Ted goes into a different room, and I totally understand Bill's room. He is at his like grandmother's birthday party, and his grandmother looks gross.
Was that Alex Winter?
Yeah.
I thought
Alex
so.
Winter playing the grandma. Yeah,
I'm assuming because it sounded like, especially like there's two parts where she talks.
Yeah,
and the first time I was like, man, that really sounds like a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second time I was like, that's gotta be.
Yeah.
So if he was doing the voice,
he did a fantastic job.
Incredible.
Yeah, I agree.
But they also did dub the princesses over for the phone call. So I was wondering if maybe they actually used an old lady's voice.
They might have. I'm not sure. I like to think it's Alex Winter, but you're right. He does do a good job if it is Alex Winter.
Yeah.
But she, the hair on the lip and chin and everything.
Yeah.
And I love the kid that plays little, like, young Bill does a good job, too.
He looks terrified.
No way. But then Ted's hell room is, maybe it's just something he's always felt guilty about. The candy he stole from his little brother, the Easter candy he stole from his little brother.
Maybe he was afraid that he would get caught by the Easter Bunny and the Easter Bunny would come after him.
And
because
that's exactly
what happens.
Yeah.
And that Easter Bunny was creepy, man.
Right, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It had a good voice, too, I think.
It did.
Yeah.
That thing was disturbing.
Yeah.
Like, more scary, I think, than a lot of stuff that we see in horror movies today.
Right.
It just had almost like a Child's Play feel to it, like that,
Yeah.
like old school, late, like 80s, early 90s kind of horror.
Yep. So they clearly decide that none of these rooms are going to be good. Obviously, they're in hell, and they decide they need to find Death. And I think when they say that, like, Death just appears, right?
Yeah, that you're right. It's like they summoned him.
Yeah. And then they decide to challenge him to a game.
Yeah.
And that's the whole battleship and Clue and everything we talked about.
Which was wonderful.
It's great. It's one of the best scenes in the movie, for sure. So he defeats them. They defeat him. And he admits defeat. And he says that because he's been beaten, he is basically at their command. Which is interesting, to have Death be like your own personal...
I missed that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So to me, he was just like hanging around on his own free will the whole time.
No, he's all, kind of peeved that he lost. And they say something like, "Can you help us find somebody who, can help us?" And he's like, "You beat me. I'm at your command." And they're like, "Oh, cool."
I gotcha.
So that's why he's like always kind of following him around, I guess. But I don't know. Is that forever? I don't know. So it'd be great if Death is in Bill and Ted 3.
Well, you said there's like, who plays him?
William Sadler.
And what's he from?
He has been in quite a few things. He was the villain in Die Hard 2.
Which I've never seen.
He was in The Shawshank Redemption.
Okay.
He is in... those are the main two things I know him from. But, and this.
Okay, so they would recast, like, if... Well, I was going to say, because you mentioned there's a bald guy from television, and I was like, what if he's going to play Death? Because he'd have to be young... He wouldn't be able to be aged. But then again, when you see what they do...
Well, granted, again, this is IMDb, and anybody can do this. This is the guy that was cast as the villain. His name is... Come on, I just had it.
The villain's the bald guy you were talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
His name's Anthony Carrigan, and he looks like that. I mean, he kind of looks like he could be Death.
He does.
But if you look under the cast for Bill and Ted 3, William Sadler is there, cast as Death. So
he looks... Yeah, if that's a recent picture, then he doesn't look like...
I don't know when this picture was, but yeah.
You click on it, it's like 2002.
1999.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a 20-year-old picture.
I was trying to make a joke about him having a really old picture up, but okay.
He is, according to his IMDb, he is known for Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, The Shawshank Redemption, Die Hard 2,
gotcha,
and Iron Man 3. He was President Ellis in Iron Man 3.
Okay.
So I'm sure we could find a more recent picture. This is from 2008. So, I mean, he doesn't look...
That's 11 years ago.
Holy cow, you're right.
Yeah.
Hold on. What's this one from? 2014? Looking a little older? Yeah. This is great content for the podcast.
I know, right?
Pictures to you that nobody can see.
He looks kind of older.
Fast forward through this part. So anyway, I forgot what we were talking about. So Death lost, and he takes him to heaven. Because that's where I guess you're going to find somebody to help him. Nobody's going to help you in hell, I suppose. So take you to heaven. But not anybody can get into heaven. You got to be wise.
That was another part that I kind of missed because I didn't see who they chose to go mug.
It was just like 3 random people, I guess. That's what it looked like to me. But
when they come back, was that obvious? Was that what they were wearing?
Yeah.
Because those clothes were odd, man.
Yeah, it was.
Like one looked like
a
Amish
farmer
guy.
Yeah. It was like a guy in a hat and a trench coat, a farmer, and then the woman wearing the dress and like hat that Death put on. And so they like are walking up. Somebody's handing out pamphlets or something. It's like welcome to heaven, and like you get a little reading material. And as they like get the pamphlet, you hear Bill off stage or off screen, I think, be like, "Hey, come here! I guess I'm going to show you." And the guys are like, "Okay," and they walk over because you're in heaven. You're not going to think you're going to get mugged in heaven, and then they get mugged. But yeah, it's like the weirdest disguises to wear. I think Ted's has like a straw hat. He's got like overalls and a straw hat. So yeah, bizarre. But that's okay. So here's my question: they get to heaven, they get to talk in front of God, and they say, can you help us find the most brilliant scientist or whatever in the universe to help us? Because I guess their plan already is to build good robot us's to battle the evil robot us's, is what they call them.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I guess that's their whole plan. Like, that's the only way they can win, is they got to have some good robots. So they don't say that to God. They just ask for, help finding, like, a brilliant scientist. And God says, station. And then sends them this, like, large,
Wasn't
clear...
Station the name of the place?
Station, I thought... Well, Station was the name of the alien. But I don't know...
I could have sworn that I heard them mention Station in the beginning of the movie.
In the very beginning of the movie, the guy... The actual musician guy that steps out of the phone booth,
Bach.
Faith No More. No.
Oh, I got you.
Well, yeah, I guess Johann Sebastian Bach, but he's an actor playing Bach. I think the guy that was from Faith No More was the actual dude from that band. When he comes out of the phone booth, he like puts up his arms and goes, "Station."
Oh, that's right.
And they all say "Station back" or something like that. So I don't really. Was Station like a thing to say back then, or was it something this movie was trying to get people to say? That's something I'm not sure about.
I don't know.
So anyway, God gives him like this clear disc, like this large, like manhole-sized cover, clear disc, and I have no idea what that was supposed to accomplish. Is it a map of heaven?
I have no idea.
Because they don't ever explain it, and then it shows Bill and Ted like holding it, and they're like, "This must be the place," or something, and then that's when they meet Station,
I guess,
aliens. And so I was like, what did God give them? So I feel like there was a deleted scene or something that explained what that was that just didn't make it into the movie. Because that was one thing I just had no idea how that explained anything. They could have just wandered around until they found Station, although they would have never known that those two aliens were the most brilliant scientists in the universe.
Of course, you could have just had someone else like mention it to them when they were watching, like if they were passing by while they were playing charades.
These are the most brilliant scientists in the universe.
Right.
Oh, we need to talk to this guy. Yeah, so it's kind of, I didn't quite understand that.
They can make us good robots.
Right, yeah. I mean, that would have been just as believable, I feel like,
Yeah.
So yeah, I would like to know what that disc was. I want to know what that was about. Or, I don't think I missed the explanation for that. So what do you think of Station? What do you think of those two
I thought
aliens?
they looked really, like, they had a nice 80s, like,
kind of Dark
Jim
Crystal.
Henson,
Yeah.
kind of feel to them. When they merge, that was pretty gross.
Right, yeah, that was a little weird. That's one of those things I forgot about until it happened. And I was like, oh, right, they become like one being.
Yeah. It was a cool concept because, like, Station, like, they were both called Station as if they were one entity.
Right.
Yeah, so they were.
Right.
And I like how when he's, like, building the good robots, like, that whole sequence.
Yeah. And like Death, he's like trying to do the hair.
Right.
He's like, he's got part of it in his mouth. Yeah, it's, I don't mind them at all. I think they're kind of cool. But at the same time, it's one of those things where this movie was already kind of weird. And then it just got
it's very weird, yeah.
With introducing them. And again, Bill and Ted, it's one of the things I love about Bill and Ted. They're just like totally cool with it. And they just go with it. They're like, these are the most brilliant. I like how they're like, these are the most brilliant scientists in the universe. And Death is like, you thought they'd be from Earth? And he's like, well, yeah. And then they realize they're wrong, and they're like, "Cool, let's go with it." They just everything kind of just rolls off off their back, which is great. It's one of the things that makes them kind of lovable, I guess.
Yeah.
The good robots don't look nearly as good as the evil robots.
No, but I don't think they're supposed to. I mean, they're
not, and it's obviously the good robots were made with.
Vacuum
1991,
cleaners.
like technology, whereas the evil robots were made like 600 years in the future.
Yeah,
and they were made with like vacuum parts, like Dust Devil parts and stuff. So Station did an excellent job with the materials that he had, of course. Also, Station's dead as well, right? Because he's in heaven, and so I guess Death
had power,
and God allowed them to come back to life too, which is interesting.
Well, I think it's Death. I think
Death brought him back. So Death brought Bill and Ted back and Station back.
I think Death has authority over He's just been given authority over people's time.
Oh, okay.
So he, was able to bring Bill and Ted back once they beat him.
Yeah.
So I think, Bill and Ted are like, well, we're bringing these people back too. And he's like, fine.
Right. Whatever.
He's under their command.
I did like that Death apologized to God. He's like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They Melvin me. I like, that's another question I had. So they're at Builder's Emporium or Building Emporium or whatever it's called. And Death sees the guy smoking. He's like, see you real soon. I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
But here's my question. There's apparently a payphone, like right in the middle of the store. Because that's where it shows Bill and Ted on the phone. I forget who they're calling. Do they call Missy or something? I forget. They're calling somebody. And the phone is literally like right in the middle of the store. Like Death is in the background looking at a catalog or something. And Station is picking out items that he needs. And they're on the phone. And usually payphones were always outside of stores, but this one is right in the middle of the store.
Well, I think they used to have some inside, but I always thought that they were like, on the wall or something.
Right, yeah, this one's...
Like, I know at the mall they had them and stuff.
Sure. But this would be like going into a Home Depot and the payphone being like in the middle of the store.
But think, man, they're making money.
I guess so.
People got to put money in it. I mean, that goes to the phone company, too, but I bet the phone company would give them a cut. Man, we're thinking way too...
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just they needed a phone there, and they put a phone there. Backing up a little bit, this is a note that I forgot to mention. So, Evil Bill and Ted are hanging out, not doing anything important, because they've already killed Bill and Ted and broken up with the princesses. So they're just hanging out in the apartment, breaking dishes, and smashing cake on the... Yeah. Being bad.
Upside down cake.
Yeah. And then they get a call from Denomalos. And he's like, you need to stop messing around and get to work. And I think it's Bill. He's like, we can ruin their relationships.
Right.
And I was like, didn't you already do that?
That's what I was thinking.
But then they drive to Missy's house. I love the way they enter Missy's house, by the way. They just ram the car into the house and like send themselves through the windshield of the car and like through the window of the house. Into the
After they were trying to hit another kitten.
Right, yes, exactly. After they tried to hit another cat. I love that part. And they're totally freaked out by it, but not freaked out by the fact that they just flew through the window and like landed into a like brick fireplace and are just getting up and like dusting themselves off. But I guess the princesses went over to Missy's to like console, get, comforted by her.
Right.
And Bill blows on her and Ted's like, evil breath, and she passes out or something. Like, that was a little bizarre. I was like, okay. But I didn't really understand, like, it seemed like they should have changed that line or something. Rather than ruining their relationships, they were like, we can kill the princesses. Because that's what they do. They get the princesses there, they take them to the Battle of the Bands, and they tie them in the rafters.
Right.
They're going to kill them at the finale.
Yeah, you're right. Should have been different.
So I don't know why they didn't just, like, kind of ADR that or something. Again, I wonder if there was, like, a deleted scene or something, or maybe that scene was originally supposed to happen earlier in the movie. So Bill and Ted end up at Battle of the Bands with the good robots that Station built. And I love that the crowd is loving it. It's Battle of the Bands. Those bands should be coming on stage, playing music, and getting off stage. And these guys are just putting on like this incredible show with no music happening whatsoever, and everybody's just loving it. And then that's when Denomalos shows up. Actually, they killed the evil robots first. The good robots come out,
punch their heads off,
uppercut their heads off, which doesn't seem like it'd be that big of a deal because they literally took their own heads off and dumped them in the basketball hoop.
Yeah, you're right.
Earlier, but then I guess while their heads were off, that's when they got like punched in their midsection and exploded.
Yeah, that's true.
So I guess at that point they're dead, which was interesting.
The crowd went wild.
Such great pyrotechnics and effects. And then Denomalos shows up, which would also be kind of cool to see, like if you're in the middle of the auditorium and this telephone booth out of nowhere just shows up and this guy in terrible clothing steps out.
The first time that I saw Denomalos, I thought he basically looked like Darth Vader without his helmet.
Yeah, basically. I do like that they put like lighting in his collar, so he's always got like the under lighting from his face. I thought that was kind of cool.
But he looks like he kind of looked like the actor
Oh yeah,
that plays,
right.
Darth Vader in the original trilogy.
Yeah, it's not the same guy, but yeah, I could see that.
I'm just saying, like he had like, the bald head and
Yeah.
kind of the white pale face. And
Yep.
I was like, is he going to say, "You were right, Luke"?
That actor, that's Joss Ackland. My wife and I, for whatever reason, we watched Lethal Weapon and Lethal Weapon 2 recently, and he's the bad guy in Lethal Weapon 2. So apparently I'm going on a little Joss Ackland marathon right now. Lethal Weapon 2 and then Bill and Ted 2. He's just the bad guy in sequels, apparently.
Speaking of seeing the same actor
Yeah.
and stuff, like literally the past maybe 3 months,
Uh-huh.
I've gotten some new movies here and there.
Yeah.
And it seemed like for about like a 2-3 month span, Ken Watanabe
Yeah, it's just been showing up in everything.
shows up in everything. And I was like, he's got to be in everything. So it
He's
was
in
like
this movie.
It
No,
was
I'm
like it was like the 6th or 7th movie.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it was. I went and saw Detective Pikachu with my
Oh,
daughter.
yeah?
He's in that.
Oh, that's funny.
So I was like, I gotta look and see like how many movies this guy has been in. And I went and looked him up, and the only ones I recognized were the ones like. Let me rephrase that.
Sure.
The only ones that weren't Japanese
Right.
were the ones that we had been watching. So we just happened to basically have all of Ken Watanabe's like American like filmography, and just watched it all. Inception, The Last Samurai, Godzilla.
Right.
It was within a 3-month period.
Oh,
It was
wow.
crazy.
Big Ken Watanabe fans at your household, I guess.
He just picks good movies.
That's maybe
He's a good actor.
He's a good actor. I agree. I like him.
Memoirs of a Geisha.
Did you watch that recently?
Yeah.
Oh wow. You just picking movies randomly? I mean, like,
These are movies that we happen to be like, let's watch this.
Oh,
and Ken Watanabe
that's funny.
just comes out.
you're just drawn to Ken Watanabe movies. That's interesting. Getting back to Bill and Ted. So we're basically at the end of the movie now. This is the part where, well, not the only part, but I thought this part was a little where like they decide that they're going to beat Denomalos, and when they beat him, they can go back in time and like, they'll get the sandbag,
Right.
the cage.
It's the same gimmick that they used
in the first film,
yeah.
right? I'm glad they didn't overuse it. They just did it for this
Right.
one little part. But then Denomalos is like, I can play that game. He's like, I'll bring a key and then a gun. And then the key is already on him, and then the gun appears out of nowhere.
Right.
And that I thought was interesting because so far, whenever we've seen that trick in the first movie and this movie, other than the trash can in the first movie that literally falls from the ceiling, nothing has just appeared out of thin air. It was always placed there either a day or two before,
right.
the event.
His just kind of appears almost like it's futuristic technology or something.
Right. And then, but then Bill and Ted kind of smirk at each other, and they're like, you forgot one thing. Only the winner gets to go back. And so he pulls the trigger and Wild Stallions rules. Like that flag pops out, which is cool and funny. But I was like, I don't understand how Bill and Ted went back in time and supplied a key on Denomalos' person.
Right.
And then had a gun come out of thin air. So that's one thing I wish it almost was a little lazy, I guess. I wish they had kind of
I know what you're saying.
done that a little differently.
But I thought the idea was pretty cool.
Right.
That he didn't put the key. Like, he's like, I have a key, and it
was actually Bill and Ted that went back and did it. Right. I'm curious.
Why would they let him out of the cage?
I guess to give him
a fake gun and then
sense
laugh
of
at
confidence. Yeah, exactly. I guess. So about that time, we see that's when Rufus. By the way, the woman that Rufus is pretending to be, Mrs. like Wardrow or something like that. That's Pam Grier. She was from Jackie Brown and lots of other movies from before Jackie Brown. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. She was in Escape from L.A. So anyway, Rufus, shows up and is basically like, I got you guys into Battle of the Bands. And then this I actually really like. The fact that Bill and Ted are like, we don't know how to play. Oh, but we've got a time machine. Let's just go learn.
Right.
And so they leave. And I love how when they leave, you see the phone booth like kind of go into the ground, and as soon as it's gone, then the phone booth comes back and lands, and they step out. So like 0 time has actually passed for us, but for them, they said it's
they went back specifically where they were supposed to go,
right?
And well, technically, I guess honestly, if you really wanted to get exactly where you're supposed to be, they would have just stepped in and then stepped right back out. There wouldn't have been a leaving and then coming back,
right?
But
I think they had to, otherwise there would have been 2 phone booths. Like with the phone booth is the time machine.
It would have just kind of swapped out, but without anyone being able to tell. You know what I'm saying?
I think so, but we've always seen it go.
I know.
Down and fall from the sky type of thing. So I feel like it had to kind of go that way.
No, I mean you got to do it for the effect,
right.
Showing hey they're leaving and then they're
right.
But anyway, they mentioned 16 months have gone by.
Yeah,
and Bill has
a ZZ Top beard.
ZZ Top beard.
That was I wrote that note down. I said Bill was able to grow that beard in 16 months. I was like, I've never tried. I mean, I don't think I've ever tried to not trim my beard for 16 months, but he was completely clean shaven. I'd be curious to see. I guarantee I wouldn't have a beard like that. Like I was thinking it was like 5 years or something, Like I thought that was a little crazy. But they also have sons. But so there's Little Bill and Little Ted.
That can happen in 16 months.
Well, yes, no, yeah, absolutely. That was not my the point there. I was thinking fast forward Bill and Ted 3. So in Bill and Ted 3, we don't know much about Bill and Ted 3.
Well, you told me, since we're talking about it, that they apparently still haven't...
That's the premise that I've read, is that they are 50 years old and they still have not written that world-changing song.
That can't be right.
It can't be right, because they write that world-changing song
at the end of
this movie, and it even says in the headline, like, I was looking at the headlines because, number one, they were funny, but number two, I was like, they must not ever say anything about achieving peace. But then there was one that says peace.
Yeah,
on Earth or something.
Bill and Ted Tour West, and then peace achieved.
Yeah, I was like, well, never mind. And so I was like, I'm curious if they're just going to ignore the ending of this movie, which I hope they don't do.
Right.
I hope that it's
I think it fits nicely.
I do too. I actually think even if we didn't get a Bill and Ted 3, I think these two movies work pretty well together.
A lot of times there's series or whatever, even if it's just 2, where people would prefer not to have the sequel involved, right, or like, let's just forget that. This one, I think, is definitely worthy of
being included.
Yeah,
I agree, and that's what I thought too. Like I was watching the end of the movie, and I was thinking, man, I hope they don't just say this is Bill and Ted 3, but it takes place as if 2 doesn't exist, because that would be kind of a bummer. Because I actually do think this movie is, like we just said, is worthy of being included. So I don't know. I wonder if they'll say peace achieved, but then in the third one we'll see that like the peace didn't last or something, and it was like that wasn't their actual world-changing song. They have another world-changing song that they've yet to write, which seems a little weird. Yeah,
it's kind of a cop-out.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see how that happens. I hope they don't just ignore it. And that's one of the things I was thinking was I totally forgot when I was watching this movie until they show up that they had those 2 boys. They had Little Bill and Little Ted, because in this new movie they've got daughters. So I'm curious if they're going to not include the sons, or if the sons are going to be adults at this point. So there'll be, the original Bill and Ted, sons Bill and Ted, and then there's also daughters, which are named Billy and Thea or something like that. Essentially just Bill and Ted again. So, yeah, I have a bad feeling that they're going to ignore the end events of this movie, which is unfortunate. Because I like this movie. And I think like I said, if Bill and Ted 3 didn't exist, or if they were not making it, I think that the end of this movie is a nice ending to the Bill and Ted story. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And it's nice that they know how to play their music.
And I wonder if that was the original intent, since they did make the song and then they had all the articles at the end, as if telling, the rest of the story of, they were successful. Like,
Yeah.
There wasn't really anything else to do after that.
Right. And that's the whole, like, I feel like that was also why, it's, again, why I hope they don't do the cop-out thing where they're like, oh, well, that was not really your world-changing song. Because Denamolo shows up, and he hacks the television cameras, like or whatever, and he's broadcasting on every channel to every location in the world. So everybody in the world who's watching TV sees Wild Stallions play their song, and that's how, like, Pieces
So he actually
helped them achieve their goal.
Yeah.
Which I guess is pretty great. Also, then Denamolos gets arrested. And I was like, why is he getting arrested?
Do you see the one that where he's
oh, the article?
The article where it says
he's going to marry Missy. Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. I also love that that's like news. You know, that's like people know who Missy is. I guess because of who Bill and Ted are. Bill and Ted became so famous, so like people around him are famous. So people know who Missy is, and also like she just goes by the one name. Missy. You know, she's like Madonna, Missy. Denamolos to marry Missy. I guess Denamolos got released from jail, and he's still living in the past.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, it is pretty good stuff. So yeah, I'm just curious about Bill and Ted 3. I hope that a lot of these movies seem to do, not a lot of these movies, but a lot of movies lately have been making sequels 20 years later or whatever.
Right. It's definitely becoming, or has been, kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's kind of, Dumb and Dumber did it with Dumb and Dumber 2, and it seems like a lot of these sequels are not as good as the originals. And part of that is because, it's kind of a nostalgia thing. We're nostalgic for these older films, and so it's cool to see these new ones, but they just are not, that nostalgia factor is not there.
Right.
So I have high hopes for Bill and Ted 3, but I think I have lower expectations for Bill and Ted 3.
You're nervous for it.
I am nervous for Bill and Ted 3.
Yeah.
I hope it's good. I really hope it's good. I also kind of I'm bummed that the title doesn't have one of their phrases in the title. Like the first one's Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and this one's Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and the third one's just Bill and Ted Face the Music.
You're right.
Like I feel like it should have.
It's kind of like Harold and Kumar go to White Castle.
Right.
Yeah.
So I am nervous for it, but I'm looking forward to it. But if it's bad, then I'm just going to say the first two are the only movies that exist, and the third one doesn't exist. Kind of like what I do with Terminator 3. We were talking about how this movie wraps it up nicely. It's a good ending to the Bill and Ted story. That's how like Terminator 2 is. Terminator 2 has like the best ending for that movie, and they ruined it by making a Terminator 3.
Ruined it?
Oh, ruined it. No, I didn't ruin Terminator 2. Terminator 2
you just got to knock Terminator 3 off.
I do. It doesn't exist to me.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel like
Indiana
what I would
Jones.
Right. There is no 4. Yeah. And that's how some people feel about the Star Wars prequels. Maybe not so much anymore, but I feel like some people were like, they don't exist when they first came out.
Right. I mean, I'm kind of halfway, but at the same time, they kind of do exist.
They kind of do exist. So let's go ahead and rate the movie.
Okay.
How many guitar solos?
Guitar solos.
How many guitar solos would you give it? How many air guitar solos?
So I'm going to actually... I was going to give it 3, but I'm actually going to bump it up to 3.5 after our conversation.
I actually was going to do the same thing. When I finished watching it today, I was like, that was good, but it wasn't as good as the first one. And so I was fully planning on giving it 3, but after talking to you about it and just kind of remembering the funny moments and talking about how it's a sequel that's so different from the first one, and that's one of the things I like about it, I feel like, yeah, I'm going to give it 3.5 as well. 3.5 air guitar solos.
Yeah, nice. I mean, I rated the original 3 stars, but it was supposed to be air guitar solos. And I think that stays. I think I actually like this movie.
Bogus Journey is
better than Excellent Adventure.
Very nice. That's cool, man. I'm glad. I fully kind of expected you to come to this conversation and be like, this movie was... I didn't think you were going to like it.
I didn't either, because you never hear about this one.
Right, yeah.
I was like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, like I said, it's not bad.
Right.
But I didn't enjoy it near as much as you did. But this one, I was like kind of feeling the Bill and Ted excitement.
Nice. That's cool. Good to know. I found out, by the way, that not only was there a Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures animated series, there was a Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures live-action series, not starring Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves.
What?
And I found it on YouTube. I tried to watch it.
No.
It's really bad. And part of the reason is because it's not Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves.
Gotcha.
It's just these two kind of unknown actors, not as good as Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter. Which you would think anybody could play like an airhead
surfer dude, yeah.
But they bring a lot of heart to it. And
right.
These other two, TV actor guys, they don't bring that. And apparently the animated series, the first season, Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves did the voices. And then in the second season, maybe they were too expensive or something, and they got those TV actors to do the voices. And I imagine it's not as good as the first season. I don't know. I haven't watched it since I was a kid.
So wait, the live action one was professionally done?
Yes. It was like,
oh, I thought you were telling me that there was just like some guys that decided to upload their own. Wow.
No. It was on TV. I think it got canceled very quickly, but it was on TV for however many episodes. I think they only made like 6 or 7 episodes, but it was actually on TV. Yeah, you can find it on YouTube.
Do I want to?
No, probably not.
I did have one note that we didn't talk about. It was just a question of Death said, if you challenge me and you lose, you must remain in the afterlife for all eternity. And I was like, what happens if you don't challenge him?
I guess you just still stay in the afterlife.
That's my point. So you might as well
challenge him.
Like Ted said about saving the princesses.
Yeah.
You gotta try.
You gotta try. Yeah, that's true. I mean, if that option was given to me,
what do you have to lose?
Yeah, you have nothing to lose, so you might as well challenge him to a game. What game would you choose? Munchkin?
I'd have to think of something that I know I'd win.
Right, yeah, exactly. I don't know what I know I would win.
Right. I don't either.
I wouldn't play anything that relied on dice rolling. There's too much chance involved. Plus, I don't know Death. He might have some kind of control over that, He might have some powers that I'm unaware of.
Like Watto.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Or no, it wasn't Watto. It was Qui-Gon Jinn.
Qui-Gon Jinn, actually, that was controlling the dice. That's right. You're right.
Little cheat.
Well, we'd love to know what you think about Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. You can always reach us at www.cinemaheroes.com. You can leave us a comment, or facebook.com/SM and SM podcast. Or you can tweet at us on Twitter @CinemaHeroes. We'd love to hear from you. I think that about wraps it up for this episode, though. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pilzel.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.